Welcome to Weld.com. My name's Adam Stretch. I'm the program coordinator and welding instructor here at Pellissippi State Community College in Knoxville, Tennessee. Today we are going to talk to you guys about tungsten. Many of you have gotten into TIG welding and you've been asking us questions about selecting the right tungsten for your application. We know you've got all these other parts. Let's break this down. Let's take a look at the different tungsten that are available and which one you would choose for various applications. Let's get started. As you've gotten into TIG welding, you've managed to pick out a torch, some consumables, nozzles, cups, gas lenses, collet bodies. This time we're actually just looking at the tungsten that you're going to use for welding. This tungsten falls under two categories. The umbrella that it falls under is the American Welding Society's A5.12. That's a specification. That's the large umbrella that all tungsten is going to fall under. Each individual piece of tungsten is going to fall under a separate classification. As we look at these classification breakdowns, they're going to be related to the alloying elements that are added to the tungsten, and each one is represented by a different color. So as we start, we're going to take a look at the periodic table of elements. As you can see in the periodic table of elements here, W stands for wolfram. Wolfram is tungsten on the periodic table of elements. We're going to need to reference this because it'll come back up. When we look at a tungsten, we're going to see a designation that says something along the lines of E, W, X, X, and a set of numbers. The E stands for electrode, meaning it carries current. The W stands for wolfram. That means this is made of tungsten. It's a tungsten electrical carrying or electrode. The XX designator here is usually a set of letters. Now that might be P, TH, CE, ZR, LA. And what that is it's representing the major alloying element that is being added to that tungsten along with pure tungsten. EWP is pure tungsten. Something like EWLA is going to be lanthanated tungsten. We'll get into a better look at that here in just a second. The last set of numbers, something like 2, is going to be the percentage of that alloying element that has been added to the tungsten. In this case, we would have EWLA2. This would be a 2% lanthanated tungsten. That's how this classification is going to break down inside of the electrodes. For a long, long time, many of you have used red or green tungsten. Red for carbon and stainless, and green for aluminum. This has been the standard use for years. Now, the red-green show, the Possum Lodge, falls under the E. If she doesn't find you handsome, she should at least find you handy. This kind of gone out of style now. We're not even using these as much as we used to be. Things have switched. They've changed. They've evolved over the years. Many of you still look at the green tungsten every time you're welding aluminum. The inverter machines that most of you are using nowadays, they don't actually recommend this green tungsten for aluminum. As you've purchased your new welder, it came with a little instruction sheet. This would be the instruction sheet that would come with the Lincoln Aspect. If you'll take a look on this side, right here, it says tungsten. Pure tungsten is not recommended. For those of you that have purchased a Dynasty, we'll have down here gray, gold, yellow, blue. Again, pure tungsten, green is not recommended. All right, let's take a look at that tungsten and what these colors of the classifications mean. Right here, we've got green tungsten. Green is going to be classified as EWP, electrode wolfram pure. That's 100% tungsten. We didn't put any alloying elements in it. This is going to be commonly used on transformer machines or the older welders, transformer rectifiers, as our aluminum or magnesium. This is what we'll use for aluminum or magnesium on something like your Lincoln Ideal Arcs or Miller Synchrowaves, right? The older big transformer machines. When you switch to carbon or stainless, it was very common to switch to that red tungsten. That's going to be an EWTH2. EWTH2, that's 2% thorium that we've added, and that's designated by the red coloring. This is commonly used for stainless steel or carbon steel applications. Those two have kind of become, like I said, a little outdated. That thorium is also radioactive. The grinding dust is radioactive, and as such has become a safety concern in some shops. Most of the modern inverters that you're going to buy will come with a gray tungsten like this one right here. This gray tungsten used to be an orange tungsten. It's been switched or standardized now to the gray. That is an EW, electrode wolfram, CE, cerium. That's got a 2% cerium. So you would see EWCE2 for this tungsten right here. That's a 2% ceriated. This is usable in all applications. You can use this on carbon, stainless, alloys, aluminum, magnesium. Sometimes you'll just change the way that you sharpen the tip or prepare the tungsten. But this is very common to find in most of the new equipment that is sold. They will include a sample pack of ceriated tungsten. All right, so now that we've taken a look at that ceriated tungsten, we're going to jump over here to what you would see as a blue or a gold, and this is going to be lanthanum. This is going to be EWLA. The gold here would be a 1.5% lanthanum. The blue would be a 2% lanthanum. So this would be EWLA2. That's a 2% lanthanum addition. This is one of the most popular ones to use as well. These both work again on all materials, carbon, alloys, stainless, aluminum, magnesium. You would just change how you sharpen the end of the tungsten, but it would be applicable for all applications. We then get into what we see designated as an EWG. And an EWG is going to be electrode wolfram general. Now, the general means that the colors are not specified to a single chemical composition. This is where different companies use proprietary combinations or tri-combinations, and you'll see the colors differently. This would be like a teal. You'll see like a chartreuse. You'll see some pinks. You'll see something like the purples here. These are from Astaris. These are the E3 tungsten. Another option that's become very popular over the years. Again, a lot of these generalized tungstens, EWGs, are usable on all materials, and that's why they've become so popular, where instead of having that green or red, carbon stainless, aluminum, you can use something like this on all applications. Doesn't matter if you're welding on stainless, carbon, chrome moly, aluminum, magnesium, one tungsten, which is very helpful when all you have to do is purchase one pack of tungsten and be able to use it on all materials. Along with that green tungsten, we will see either a brown or a white. I don't have a white sample here, but this would be zirconium. You would see this as an EWZR. This is going to be brown, which is a 0.3%, or white, which is a 0.8% zirconium addition. Zirconiated tungsten, like this here, is commonly found as a replacement or alternative option for running the green tungsten. The zirconium is typically used again on those transformer rectifier machines like the Synchrowaves or Ideal Arcs as an alternative option for pier for aluminum or magnesium welding. So if you see brown or white, again, those are aluminum or magnesium tungsten for the older transformer rectifier machines most commonly used. I personally like the zirconium a little more than the pier. Try it out. See which one works best for you. All right, when it comes time to pick out your tungsten, you're going to be purchasing, most commonly, tungsten is sold in a 7-inch long piece and sold in a pack of 10. So once you've decided on the color of tungsten, you need to determine which diameter of tungsten is appropriate for your needs based on your application. We've got a couple examples right here of the purple E3s. What we're looking at is a 0.020, which is a 0.5 millimeter, a 0.040, which is a 1 millimeter, a 1/16, which is a 1.6 millimeter, a 332, which is a 2.4 millimeter, a 1/8, which is a 3.2 millimeter. As we look at these, we have to determine if we're having a lot of amperage, we're expecting this to carry a lot of amperage, we're going to need a much larger diameter, or a very small amount of amperage, we'd go to that much smaller diameter tungsten. Give you guys some examples. A 0.020 down here, this would be rated for 2 to 20 amps. So if I'm welding some 1/4-inch steel, this is probably the wrong choice. This 1/8-inch tungsten down here is more of a 225 to 330 amp type. Now, it's not to say I can't weld on smaller diameter or smaller material thickness with a larger diameter tungsten with a little bit of shaping on the tip that I grind. But I don't want to exceed the capacity of the tungsten in its amperage. What you'll find is you start getting little nodules or the end actually melting and falling off. Let's take a look at an arc shot here where the tungsten actually falls into the weld because we've exceeded that weld capacity. All right, now that we've taken a look at what happens when we run too much amperage, we also have to consider the polarity that we're being run on. Most of our TIG welding for alloys, stainless, chromoly, exotics, is going to be done in a direct current electrode negative state. Our aluminum and magnesium are very commonly welded in an alternating current state. Now, I have personally found that running a 332 tungsten covers most of what we're going to come across in a day-to-day average welding. Although if you're doing a lot of aluminum, you may find it beneficial to go ahead and jump up a tungsten size to that 1/8-inch material. When we're trying to pick out the appropriate tungsten diameter, let's take a look at our material thickness of our steel. And for every thousands of material thickness, we would have 1 amp per thou. So if I was welding on 1/8-inch material, I would be averaging about 125 amps. 125 amps, that would be well inside the range of the 332 tungsten. You could drop down to the 1/16. If I'm doing a lot of welding, I might want to carry a little bit of extra current in that 332. Again, general all-purpose size. Now that you've selected the appropriate size tungsten that you'll be using, you need to make sure that you match your consumables, your collets and collet bodies, gas lenses. These are all also rated based on the diameter that you are selecting of your tungsten. So if you're using an 040 tungsten, you're going to want to make sure you're using 040 collets and collet bodies. If you're using 332, you're going to need 332 collets and collet bodies. Let's just make sure that we are using the appropriate. Don't be trying to jam an 1/8 inch collet and collet body and tighten it up on a 332 tungsten and wonder why it doesn't quite fit in there. It's not designed for it. You're going to have some issues. Make sure you're selecting the appropriate size. Another thing that would come into your amperage or the diameter that you are choosing of your tungsten here would be your torch. We'll cover some of these other consumables and accessories in other videos, but your torches are of an amperage rating. If I'm using a number 9 torch, which is a 125 amp air-cooled torch, I'm probably not doing a lot of 300 amp welding, and I'm probably not going to need that 1/8 inch tungsten. We'd be better off with these smaller ones designed to match the capacity of my torch. All right, now that we've picked out the type of tungsten and the appropriate diameter of tungsten for our application, we've got to figure out how to sharpen the tungsten. We've got to put a point on it somehow. There's multiple ways to sharpen your tungsten. Some guys will use a 4.5 inch angle grinder like this. Some guys will use a Sharpie tungsten sharpener or similar handheld type sharpener. A lot of times guys will use a 6 inch pedestal grinder, 6 or 8 inch pedestal grinder in the shop. You'd want to make sure you're using a dedicated wheel for your tungsten, whichever application you're using. I myself like to use a belt sander with about an 80 or 120 grit sandpaper on it. Another option would be something like this kit that you can pick up relatively inexpensive from Harbor Freight. I've also seen these at Northern Tool. You mount it in a grinder and sharpen your tungsten with this as the diamond wheel. Now that we've looked at some different ways to sharpen our tungsten, let's talk about the angle that we're going to sharpen our tungsten on. All right, let's take a look at some different grinds and the textbook answers as to what we're going to wind up with. We have a very long taper. We have a normal 3-to-1 taper. We have a very sharp point, and we have our bald tungsten. Our very long point like this will give us different weld profiles. This weld profile here is going to look for something along this line. It'll have a little bit wider bead with a little shallower penetration. This can be very useful if you're doing something like sheet metal and you're not trying to really penetrate through, or some open root applications. This is going to give us our pretty standard weld bead profile. This is what most often you'll be using. A very aggressive, very, very sharp point like that, it'll actually help drive that weld puddle down farther in. If you're trying to get deeper penetration, say you got knife edge to knife edge and you're trying to make sure you punch all the way through, you might want to shorten up that tungsten profile. The bald tungsten like this, that's where you're going to use the green or zirconium. That's commonly used in aluminum on those old 60 hertz machines, the synchro waves, and the ideal arcs. The older machines will use bald tungsten. Many of the new machines, even if we're doing aluminum, we're still going to go with a standard point, but we would just put a small flat on the end of it when we get done. And that'll hold that nice sharp tip with the E3, that purple tungsten, your serrated, your lanthanum. You can run that without balling it up. You can ball it up if you choose, but you don't have to for many applications. There's a lot of discussion and argument over how to sharpen your tungsten. These are kind of the textbook answers. Shallow profile, long needle-like point, normal weld beads, normal application, about a 3-to-1 taper. So this is going to be three times the diameter of the tungsten will be the length of that taper. Very short blunted. versus the balled up tungsten. Not every application requires the same sharpness. So try some of these out. Do a cut and etch. Take a look at it for yourself. Every welder is going to have their tungsten the way they like it sharpened. Just remember, when we come up to the sharpening wheel, we want to make sure that we are in the line with whatever we're sharpening with. We want our striations to come down, aligned with our tungsten. We do not want them to go across. Going across like that will cause the arc to wander versus having the arc come down. We can take a look at this image here, this weld. As you can see in this image, we see the arc and the way it's coming off the tungsten, how it actually flares out right here. This is not coming off the point. We can see that the arc is coming from back up on the tungsten slightly from the tip. Thanks for tuning in today. If you've got questions or comments, you can connect with us through the Weld.com forum or comment below. You can also reach us through our website, chat, Instagram, or Facebook. Now that you've got a better understanding of these tungsten electrodes, how to put them to good use, weld yourself up a nice little tungsten holder. A great project for you to practice with. Take your tungsten. Go use these new skills. Thanks for tuning in.